Ready? Good evening. I am Vice President Cynthia Elliott, Chair of the Human Resource Committee, the Committee of the Whole, and want to welcome and call this meeting to order. I also want to recognize that we have Commissioner Rosa on Zoom, and also our State Monitor, Dr. Shelley Jallo, also on Zoom. So welcome, and welcome commissioners, welcome everyone who is in the room. We have one speaker this evening, and we have, I believe, comments from probably about 16 people who made comments, and so we want to thank them for their comments, and I'll turn to the clerk to announce who the speaker is.
Tonight we have joining us Felicia Monroe, a parent, who will be discussing district transportation. Felicia is joining us from Zoom. Felicia, are you there? Looks like we're having some trouble connecting with Felicia.
What we can do is that if she gets connected, we'll come back to her and we'll consider the resolutions for right now and come back to the speaker. Can I get a motion for resolutions
So moved.
2021-22, 128, 129, 130, 132, 133, 134, and 136, and it's been moved by President White. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any questions on any of those resolutions?
Yes.
Commissioner LeBron?
Just on resolution 128, the coordinator of supplemental funds, these titles, I think I remember these titles from the plan that was submitted as a draft to the state and still pending approval, so I just want clarification on these two positions.
Dr. Morris or Dr. Miller can answer. I believe it would be Dr. Morris.
Good evening, everyone. The positions are indeed funded through CURSA, and we've been given preliminary information that that has been approved.
But the state has not officially approved us for these two, for the plan overall. So if these positions, so let me first just say that I personally, we have had in this district the experience of having early indications of a yes and then not having it in writing and then having to backtrack funding to figure out some of these things. I'm not comfortable approving it if the state has not approved the entire plan, or has at the very least submitted separate documentation indicating in writing that they would be supporting these two positions. In addition to that, if the state doesn't approve the plan with these two positions, where would we fund these two positions from in the budget?
Commissioner LeBron, the positions and that portion of the funds were approved at 5:22 p.m. today by the state.
And I received the call from Commissioner Rosa.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on those resolutions?
Yes, yes, Madam Vice President.
President White?
Thank you. I'm looking at resolution, it's like 130. This is a resolution, for those who don't have the documents in front of you, for the permanent appointment of a number of positions, including assistant clerk, cook, porter, paraprofessional, etc. Madam Superintendent, I just want to make sure, just as an overview, how are we doing with the rest of our positions, employment positions? This a shortage that we see amongst bus drivers is actually not limited to that particular field, as I understand it. I know we had some challenges in terms of sentries, and by the way, the challenges that we are having as a district, I think are being felt throughout the state and the country. We do know that the federal unemployment checks will stop, I believe it is next week or the week after that. Just sort of looking ahead, being cautious, how are we doing with these other positions? Are we having any shortages or challenges in those areas? And if so, how are we responding to them?
So President White, we have a presentation prepared tonight from Dr. Miller to go over that. But when I have my presentation, I'd like to address a few things that might delay making that presentation.
Very well.
Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah, I was just going to ask for an update on the vacancy request that I made yesterday for the report, because there are a number of schools that don't have their paras. I see that we have a resolution with some, but I do not think that this resolution is going to address the entire food services deficit that we still continue to have, in addition to the paras that we don't have, and some special education teachers not assigned yet for families. Some families reporting they don't have teachers. So I'm just curious as to when we will have discussions around the rest of school reopening. Although I recognize that transportation is the crisis at hand, there are other areas in the district, other deficits in our staffing that we also need to address.
Commissioner LeBron, I'm going to present in just a moment, and I will ask, again, we are prepared to make the human resources presentation around staffing, and when we get to that point, I'll ask for the board's consideration and we can see which direction that we want to go in.
Any other questions on these resolutions? Commissioner Malloy?
I'm just wondering if it might make more sense then for us to listen to the presentations first and then have these discussions around the specific resolutions prior to voting?
Yeah, President White?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, Commissioner Malloy, that no matter what challenges we may have, that we're going to need these employees that are listed here. So while the presentation may be informative, and the superintendent will correct me if I'm wrong, it will not discourage me from ratifying these particular employment positions. Is that right?
Correct.
We need these people. There may be limitations to our ability to get others, which she may describe in a few moments, but my perspective is I'd be prepared to vote for these because we need these people. And
right,
probably
I'm
need
prepared
them.
to vote for these as well, President White, so no disrespect intended.
Sure.
We need these people, certainly, but in the terms of productive conversation and dialogue, that's all I'm saying.
Commissioner Powell, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to call attention to the fact that our speaker has arrived, I think.
I know, I got that. I got it covered.
That's
All right.
all I was trying to get your attention for.
Sure, yeah, thank you. Like to call this question, all in favor of these resolutions, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye to all except a nay to 128.
Oh, I know, I got that, I got it covered.
That's
All
all
right.
I was trying to get your attention for.
Sure, yeah, thank you. Okay, I think we have our speaker.
How do you want me to vote on that?
Who's,
we need to vote.
did we vote?
No.
I'm not seeing it.
We voted, but we have this virtual vote. I just don't know. You listed them all.
Yes, they are, this is the consent agenda, so I'll have to pull 128 out, and I'll record your vote as no to 128.
All right, thank you.
But you can go ahead and vote on this.
So I understand Ms. Monroe is ready, connected. Ms. Monroe,
Yes, I'm here.
welcome.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you for
I'm
coming. No problem.
thank you. I'm a little under the weather, so I'm trying to speak up.
All right, take your time.
So my questions, and maybe the superintendent will speak more upon it when she speaks, but my issue is with transportation, of course. I have questions in regards to the Walker buses for 10, 17, and 22. I would like to know how many children does that impact? I also would like to know, would they be given a remote option for the children that's walking and they can't walk there safely? to school by themselves for the younger students. And then also for the 144 students K through 6 that do not have transportation at all, those 17 routes, would they be allowed to work remotely? My next question is, how many children will be on the bus? Because if the bus is packed, I don't feel that it's safe for my child or any other child. I also would like to know what our backup plan is if more drivers decide to resign. And then I have another question. Why didn't we consider a hybrid option like other cities that has the same issue with the bus drivers so that students could get into the class and we just alternate them and that would help with some of the transportation issues?
Any other comments, Ms. Monroe?
No, that was it.
All right, thank you. The superintendent will respond to your questions at a later date. We won't be able to do it at this meeting, but thank you. Please watch the presentation, however. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, back to the resolutions. Can I get a motion for resolution 2021-22-123?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on that resolution? 123. It's under 4A. No question. All in favor?
Aye.
I only heard one aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Resolution, can I get a motion for resolution 2021-22-135?
So moved.
I just need
Seconded.
1 second, sorry, the motion wasn't closed for, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Oh, was
close
not closed?
No,
It was not
I just
closed.
opposed 'cause I don't know what
I'm
it is.
closing the voting now,
Okay,
and the resolution did pass 6-1.
okay, thank you. So did I get a motion for resolution 135?
Yes, ma'am. I made
I
that
got a
motion.
second for that?
Second.
Any questions on resolution 2021-22-135? All in favor, if there are no questions?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And we have to wait for the screen to come up to vote, right?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
I've got to get in the flow of that, Madam Board Clerk. Right?
I just changed
Okay,
Are we good with that?
yes, we
All
are. The
right, can I
motion
get a
does
motion?
pass 7-0, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion for resolution 2021-22-124?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor of resolution 124?
No
Aye.
questions.
Aye.
Oh, any questions? I'm sorry, thank you,
Sorry.
President. Any questions for resolution 124? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution 2021-22-125, the appointment to the professional educator tenure
1
area.
second, let me just call the vote.
Say that again?
I'm just calling the vote for
Oh,
124.
okay, I'm moving too fast.
Just a
I'm
little
sorry.
bit. So the motion did pass 7-0.
All right. So can I get a motion for resolution 2021-22-125?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Any questions of that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're going to wait for the screen to pop up so that we can. Okay. We're all good with that? Ms. White?
Just waiting on one more
Okay.
vote. Okay, the motion does pass 7-0.
Thank you. Can I get a motion for resolution 2021-22-126?
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions on resolution 126? If no questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. The motion carries, Madam Clerk.
Madam
You-
Vice
Didn't pop
President,
up. Oh, there we go.
1 more minute, please. The motion does pass for resolution 126, 7-0.
Thank you. Can I get a motion for resolution 2021-22-127?
Motion.
Second.
All right. And any questions on resolution 127? No questions, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And the clerk,
Madam Vice President,
yes.
just a quick point of information. I'd ask that the superintendent, at the appropriate time, obviously this would not be the appropriate time, I know that our team is very busy, but I know we signed on to, at our own initiative, a consent decree regarding our special education students and our special education initiatives. I would like, again, at the appropriate time, to get an update on where we're at with that particular consent decree. I can't recall the last time we had an update. I know we have had one, but I don't know when the next one is due. Does the clerk know off the top of your head?
Repeat the question, I'm so sorry.
When we're due for another update on our special education consent decree status?
I do not know off the top of my head, but I will.
And that's totally understandable. If I could, at some time, be informed as to when that next update is, I assume it would be before excellence, actually equity and student achievement. But again, it's important that we stay on top of that the board stay on top of that particular consent decree. So, Madam Superintendent, if you could make sure that every board member is informed as to when that update will take place, that would be appreciated.
So did I leave off at 127?
Yes,
Okay, do I need a
so
vote for that?
126 did pass, a 7-0, so you can do.
Okay. So did we move in second 127?
No, not yet.
Okay, all right. Can I get a motion for Resolution 2021-22-127?
So moved.
Seconded.
Second, thank you. Any questions of Resolution 127?
You mean 137? You already voted on 127.
No, I'm looking at 127. Did we vote on 127?
No, this is 137, the termination.
We voted on 127 already?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay, so 137. Thank you for that. Any questions on that? 127? Excuse me, 137?
Ma'am.
All right. We'll take our vote. The clerk will let us know that's been recorded.
Okay, you can also do a voice vote. You can also call for the voice vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, the motion passes 7-0. I have been advised that there is a walk-on resolution at this time, and so I'm going to ask for administration to.
There's another resolution?
Yes, walk-on.
There's a walk-on right now?
Yes.
Why? So are we taking a moment to read this?
Yes.
Plus, we didn't finish all of those resolutions. We still have 128, but of course, that's a gift.
Are we going into recess to read these?
130.
That is the walk-on.
Oh, okay, this is the 138.
Yeah.
Oh,
This is the walk-on, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
why we get paper copies of it?
Oh, because just think, this is the protocol in terms of when there's a walk-on, they bring them so you can have
But it's
them.
already in the system.
It wasn't in there, it wasn't in the packet for the 48-hour packet, so it is technically a
I know,
walk-on.
but it's, okay. It's already in here.
Yeah, it's on the agenda as a gift acceptance. So can I get a motion
So
for
moved.
Resolution
Second.
138? Any questions on this resolution? And Deputy Superintendent Davis, you'd like to talk a little bit about this?
Yes, yeah. Good evening, President White, Vice President Elliott, and Commissioners. We are extremely excited to be able to bring this walk-in resolution to you tonight. By the Conky Cruiser, Conky Cruisers have partnered with Exercise Express and local bicycling organizations to support our students in the crisis of the transportation by providing new bicycles, helmets, and locks to students unable to be transported to school with the approximate value of $12,000. They are providing bicycles to parents, guardians, and caregivers to ensure that students are using a safe route to school and not biking alone. The bikes will be donated to Dr. Walter Cooper Academy, school number 10, Enrico Fermi, school number 17, and Abraham Lincoln, school number 22. They will be donating 50 bicycles and helmets per school. And these bikes are for students that live within the 1.5-mile radius of the school and no longer qualify for the bus. They are here tonight, so we wanted to bring this resolution as a gift acceptance to you so that students can start using them Thursday.
All right, thank you. President White?
Yeah, normally I ask that Commissioner Malloy recognize gifts, but I wanted to take the time, Vice President Elliott, to offer my own appreciation and thanks. People know Nurse Bowick as a community advocate, a healthcare professional, and a noted author who has received well-deserved recognition, not only in Rochester, but throughout this community. And this donation actually probably began many, many years ago. The Conkey Cruisers have been in existence for many years, offering the healthcare benefits that are referenced in the Danish study, but to our citizens for many years. And so I don't want folks to think that this is just, and I know people who are informed know better, but this is not something new for Nurse Bowick and the hundreds of volunteers that have worked with her and this community to make this difference. And what is so significant about this donation is it comes at a time of need. Again, the analogy is not perfect, but it is pretty darn close. A number of citizens in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955 organized their citizens for an important cause. They used bikes to get people to their appointed jobs and to their schools. And so on behalf of the board, and I'm sure other board members may have thanks to offer and gratitude to offer, I want to thank Nurse Bowick and again, all those folks who I don't know their names, all those folks that made the donations of the bikes to Conkey Cruisers, and all those folks that...
I just wanted to extend my personal appreciation. I do know them outside of here in my capacity as superintendent. I've known them both for many years. And they truly typify, right, being an active part of the community, but really backing up, saying, well, there needs to be a solution. They proposed a resolution to a problem that we're having, and then they actively moved within a very short amount of time. So Nurse Bowick and Karen, thank you so much for your generosity, your kindness, and your compassion as it relates to our scholars. Thank you.
And you're very
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank you all. Certainly thank President Van for inviting us here tonight. You know, it is an honor to be in this place. And I want to remind us all of the words of the theologian Friedrich Budrich. And he said to us that the place that God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness meets the world's deep hunger. Right now, our district is a little bit hungry. And so we are here with a gift that we were able to bring the community together and say, you know what, this is a time we don't have time for complaining. We don't have time for pointing fingers. We got kids that got to get to school this week.
Amen.
And so I am honored to share the gifts that came into Conkey Cruisers. And it is all God, because our bank account was hurting. We were on fumes the beginning of the year. And so to walk out of Walmart having purchased $12,158 worth of bikes ain't nothing but God. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to say thank you, Karen Rogers of Exercise Express. I really want to let everyone know also there is a huge safety component ride to school. So not only are they going to get bikes, helmets, accessories for their bicycles, locks, we will be giving and talking to each child and parent about the safeties of riding a bike to school, how to be visibly seen, how to be heard. Every bike is required to have a bell, how to lock up and secure your bike so no one takes it away from you, so you'll be able to use it even after school. And we also have to let you all know that there is a huge health and wellness component to this. We have been trying to do this for years. Our kids are going to be getting healthier from riding their bike to school. Many of our kids suffer from obesity, and this will help in that fight also. So in some forms, we're killing, several birds with one stone. So we want to thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And as I said, we really do appreciate your support of the Rochester City School District and our children and families. Thank you so very much. Thank you for being here. So I think we have a motion. Do we have a motion and a second for Resolution 138?
Yeah.
Yes.
Second.
Commissioner Powell?
That was a motion, yes.
That was a motion, and
We already motioned.
yeah, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Looks like we have 7-0, and you will,
1 second, just waiting for people to indicate the vote. Yes, the motion does pass, 7-0.
thank you. So that concludes the consideration of resolutions. The next item on the agenda is an update on the district transportation plan that will be presented by Superintendent Myers-Small. Madam Superintendent?
Sure. Thank you, Vice President Elliott. Good evening again to everyone. I am going to present an update, as promised, relative to our current situation. As of 4 p.m. today, we had 9 additional drivers who have resigned. These 9 resignations impact students with disabilities routes. The specific numbers entail Monroe Transportation, 1 driver for 9 routes, which equals 51 students. Ontario Bus, 2 drivers for 2 routes, which equals 7 students. First Student, which equals 6 for 8 routes of 112 students. There are 19 additional unassigned routes totaling 36 assigned routes, impacting 174 students with disabilities. So with that, we need to certainly, I'm asking if it's the board's pleasure and if they would approve for our team to leave the meeting, having Dr. Miller stay to present on the human resource update per Commissioner LeBron's request. And if we'll have Deputy Superintendent Martinez Davis as well as a chief or 2 to stay, but we really need to get moving with school being right around the corner on the first day of Thursday, September 9th. So I'll let you mull that over for just a moment, but I do want to provide some good news. RTS has approved the new routes for the 5 schools, which are Edison, Leadership Academy, Northeast, Northwest, and Rochester Early College High School. Those routes would begin on September 13th, so that means just for the 9th and the 10th, would students who are not able to get transportation, able to get themselves, they would be in a simultaneous mode for just 2 days and would start on Monday. Students who are not able, again, to arrange their own transportation would log on to Google Classroom and follow their schedules. All students at these 5 schools will return to in-person learning on Monday, September 13th. So I would be remiss not to mention that that is a huge move forward compared to where we were yesterday. I continue to uplift the fact that our team, transportation department, there are many hands that are trying to make this work light. And we are literally working tirelessly to make sure we can get our scholars back. But again, what I would ask, if the board would consider having Dr. Miller present, leaving Dr. Martinez in my stead with a chief or 2 to stay, and obviously with general counsel, and if we could go and really begin to work this problem very shortly.
I do have just a clarifying question.
Commissioner LeBron?
Just on the numbers again, and I know I'm okay with you leaving, but I would like you to clarify these numbers today, and then we can have your staff present.
Sure.
Yesterday, we had 17 routes and 144 students who are not accounted for with these plans, including the RTS plan. With this PowerPoint on slide 2, are you saying we have 19 more additional routes on top of the 17 routes that we didn't have transportation for yesterday, and an additional 174 students from special education?
That is correct.
I'm just not clear as to what Monday is going to change for these students, because we keep saying that the kids are going to all these 5 schools, but none of these kids are from these 5 schools, and
Correct.
these routes are not from these 5 schools.
That is correct, Commissioner LeBron. So again, we are working on the obtaining drivers, so these scholars will be in a simultaneous instruction mode unless they can get to school.
So remote will be open to these students?
To these students.
Commissioner Powell?
The other day I send a private message to the superintendent asking, one question, I'm going to ask it publicly now. Is it an option to use taxi or Lyft or Uber to transport some of these special ed kids? If we're talking about situations where there are perhaps only 1 or 2 students per route, are those options, from a legal standpoint, I know they'd be hugely expensive, but from a strictly legal standpoint, is that an option?
That is not, and I'll have Chief Michael Schmidt explain why.
Thank you.
May I just defer to Steve in regards to that ed law about the transportation?
No, it's not an option to transport students under the age of 18 in any capacity by either Lyft or Uber. They won't take them, first of all, by their standards. But when you're talking about the district contracting to transport students, we have to meet all the rigid requirements of the transportation law, which includes a lot of background checks and fingerprinting that is well beyond what Uber taxi drivers have. So it is not at this time a viable option.
Okay, I just wanted to get that on the record, thanks.
Commissioner Adams?
I'm in favor of
Okay.
I just wanted to add, however, because we are committed to providing transportation for students with disabilities. So what will happen is that we'll need to cover these routes, and then we will have to shift it to general education students. So I just want to be clear about that. Special education will be covered.
Okay, so we will, President White? Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Malloy?
So all told, how many students won't have transportation for our first day of school on Thursday, all told?
As of right now, it is 144 plus, but again, this is real-time, Commissioner Malloy, so we have 174 students with disabilities, but it all depends on the shifting that we make for the general education students. So I can't answer that question right now. It's not a one-for-one necessarily.
Okay, thank you.
President White?
Yeah, it appears that the superintendent will need some additional time. She has, and one could understand why, because what she's saying is these impacted students are students with disabilities. By law, we have to provide coverage for them. So that means coverage that we have for other students already has to be strategically shifted over.
Correct.
That obviously can't happen in the course of this meeting. She has asked Madam Vice President for the opportunity to leave some of her team here so we can continue on with this meeting and so that she can strategize about how things are going to shift and answer questions from this board and the community. I respectfully suggest that she be allowed to do that. We continue on with our meeting, and also, Madam Vice President, and to my colleagues, I suggest that we concede that there must be another meeting tomorrow.
Correct.
Because she's not going to be able to work the solution in the time that we're having this meeting. And we can deliberate on that in a few minutes or after our meeting, but it's clear we'll need another meeting tomorrow.
Commissioner Malloy?
Just lastly, I just want to make sure that all of those families have been contacted personally.
No.
Which
they're
families?
aware of all the students who don't have transportation for that first day. We haven't communicated that.
This just happened at 4. So the previous announcement, robocalls and schools have been reaching out to make contact, but the notification again happened at 4. That's part of what we'll have to do when we leave.
Thank you.
And I just respectfully ask the media, I will entertain questions very briefly, but as you understand, I do need to get to work.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. So we will continue with the presentation. Is that, Chief Miller, is that you? All right, thank you.
Good evening, President White, Vice President Elliott, Commissioners. So typically, this type of a presentation would be one that I would give after school is opened, and we would report on the first day of school. But certainly, given our evolving needs and the ask and the challenges that we're facing, it's important that we provide you an update. Next slide, on our staffing. So the current state, certainly as you know from your own reading and your understanding of current events, both the labor shortage locally in Rochester, regionally, across the state, nationally, just in the general workforce, combined with the teacher shortage that we have experienced for several years, and the impact of COVID, has had a significant impact on our ability to recruit and retain, particularly in urban school districts like ours. Bluntly, there is a national shortage of workers. This summer in the district here in Rochester, we've had 223 resignations and retirements. 138 of those resignations and retirements were teachers, and that's higher than normal. Normally, we would have 90 to 100. We also saw a significant increase in loss of teachers to our neighboring districts. The impact of COVID and the mandate to show a proof of your vaccine or submit to weekly COVID testing has had an impact. We have heard from substitutes, we have heard from drivers, we have heard from staff that that's just something that they either don't want to do, or the impact of COVID has compelled them to rethink their staying in our workforce, particularly with our substitutes. We also know, that there's a continued decline in enrollment at college teaching preparation programs, and that certainly has a limited effect on our ability to hire. I also need to say that the uncertainty in our district has an impact. The unemployment situation and the unemployment benefits that citizens they're afforded has an impact. The layoffs that we saw in our district last year has an impact because some of those people never returned. Next slide. So I want to provide data in terms of our operational vacancies as of 9 a.m. this morning. And what I want to do, given the limited time to prepare for this presentation today, what I want to do is be able to provide you some additional analysis that shows some comparisons to previous years so that you can compare what these vacancies look like today in contrast to 2 years ago in 2019 when we opened in September. Of course, in 2020, we did not open in September in person. Certainly, we have talked about the bus driver vacancies within our district. This slide shows by position the total FTE that we have or should have, and the number of vacancies we have at this moment in time, and what that is as a percent. In terms of safety and security, the sentries, our school SSOs, they're broken up in terms of those that are in actual schools versus those that are rovers. Many of these vacancies we are working to fill with temporary staff, and I would share that today, right, these data are from 9 a.m. this morning. Today and tomorrow are significant periods of movement where we hire and bring people in. Every school has multiple clerical and custodial, and no school is without custodial or clerical. We have offered overtime for custodial to ensure a clean, safe, and smooth opening at each of our schools. Our school chiefs, who are, as you know, in constant regular contact with our principals, have confirmed to us that every school will be open and able to provide a level of service needed to operate. On the next slide, I want to highlight our instructional vacancies as of 9 a.m. this morning. And again, similarly, you see the positions, the total FTE, the number of vacancies, and the percentage that represents. As I mentioned at the opening, we're facing an incredible staffing shortage, and our vacancies, as in years past, in the teaching area, are in high shortage areas where we have unfortunately, in years past, had to hire subs to support student instruction. Sometimes these subs are certified as teachers, but they may have a different certification than what we need. Itinerant teachers are important to note, and they're separated from full-time teachers because itinerant teachers are those teachers who are perhaps traveling between schools, but who represent part-time sections. So we know that a full-time teacher is a 1.0 equivalent, FTE, and we will break an individual up into 5 sections, and so there'll be a 0.2 or a 0.4 or a 0.6 or a 0.8. And so many of those itinerant part-time positions we will seek to offer to teachers who are already full-time to pick up maybe one section. And they do receive additional pay for that, but we're not paying someone else to do it. And the benefit of that from our principals and from the staff in a school is that it keeps staff consistent in a school when you have a teacher there. It's not the desired plan, but it is a backup plan, and it's one that we will be looking to in those instances. I would also add that not reflected on this slide is that there are 36 teachers on special assignment whose positions we will hold off on filling because our priority is to fill classroom positions. Where it matters is in the classroom with students. Not to say our special positions aren't important, they are, they're very important, but we're prioritizing classrooms. In terms of our paraprofessionals and teaching assistants, we partner and we have a contract with the employment store, also commonly referred to as TESS. We are working with TESS to fill those paraprofessional and teaching assistant vacancies that remain. As you know, we spend the spring and the summer and working late into the summer to hire people that are fully certified. And it's at the end of the summer that we reach a point where we make the decision that we need to get on our backup plan here. And so that's what we're doing. The use of long-term substitutes, and perhaps in some instances contract substitutes, will also be pursued for those full-time teaching vacancies that you see. I need to share, or I will share rather, some comparative data. And I need to tell you that I'm not yet a full year in the district, but I'm disappointed that we have teaching vacancies still, and it would be my expectation that we start the year with none. And it's our work over the next 2 days, today and tomorrow, to close that gap. But I will share that in 2019, in September, in mid-August, we had 317 teaching vacancies. On the first day of school, we had 218 teaching vacancies. 126 were classroom teachers. And so where we are now, as a comparison, is 120 teachers, 84 of which are classroom. And again, we're working to fill those today and tomorrow. Next slide, thank you. So I've shared this image, this circle, this wheel, because it's an important one for our community and for all of us that work in the Rochester City School District, who live in the great city of Rochester, because we all have an impact on how we recruit and how we retain our staff. I'm very fortunate, we're very fortunate, I should say, that people are stepping up and they're helping us, right? They see our need and they're helping us. Shiftif, Itinerant Miller, as one example, who's been promoting vacancies and helping to connect. But we all play a role in how we put forth efforts to recruit and retain the most effective, diverse staff. And everything that we do as a community, as a school, as citizens, either attracts or discourages prospective staff, or everything we do attracts or discourages our current staff. And it's really that simple. And we, as a community, need to continue to work on our mindsets, on the levers and the systems that we have in the district, because when we do things well, we're going to have better recruitment and retention. Next slide. Given our current need, I would be remiss if I didn't highlight our needs, right? And I want to put out for the community how to become a school bus driver. And people know we're hiring, and we've increased by 10.5% our rate of pay for bus drivers. It is meaningful, important work, and we know that. We provide paid training. If someone does not have a CDL, we can hire them as a bus attendant, and we can work with them over the 8 weeks it takes to get their CDL license to be a bus driver and to work with our students. Next slide. I also want to call out that to the community and to our staff, we need substitutes. And so we can all help to recruit bus drivers. We can all help to recruit substitutes, because through this crisis and through COVID, we have really impacted our substitute pools. We have a, I will say, modest substitute teacher pool. I won't say healthy because it needs to grow further, but in terms of bus drivers, bus attendants, custodial, and food service, we need to build those substitute pools up. So if you know anyone who has that interest, they can apply at our careers website, rcsdk12.org/careers. They can call us, they can show up at Hudson, or even here at 131 West Broad Street. In terms of next steps, we will continue to partner with our principals and other leaders to ensure our staffing levels are met. We are working, as I mentioned, with TESS on filling vacant paraprofessional and teaching assistant positions. We are working closely, as we have been for months, with our Office of Special Education to ensure as priority that all of our students' IEP needs are met, because that is so critical. Next slide. And we're continuing throughout the day today and tomorrow to finalize the deployment of our substitutes so that they are in schools and classrooms on the first day of school. We will make attempts to use teachers who are in special assignments to assist in the short term. And once the school year starts and we have data on who is actually attending in person, as we do every year, but with great importance this year, we will ensure that we balance and rebalance our classes and our class loads, not to overload, but to ensure efficiency in staffing based on that student attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Miller. I'm going to start with our Zoom to see if Dr. Jallo, if you have any questions.
I would just actually like to see the backup to support the numbers. We've always been challenged with enrollment numbers and other data, so I would just, I'll set up a meeting with Dr. Miller to look at the backup information that supports those numbers. I thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jallo. Commissioner Rosa, do you have any questions for the chief? Okay, maybe she'll come back on later. All right. All right, thank you. So I'll start with Commissioner Powell. Do you have any questions of Dr. Miller?
Not at this time, please.
Commissioner Malloy?
Yes, if you could just maybe clarify, that with the increase in testing, we're probably going to see many teachers or other staff members who might come down with COVID. Do we have building substitutes in place in most buildings who can cover those first few weeks of school? And what's the plan there for that type of coverage?
We do. Each school has a building sub. We may need their support given some of our shortages, but that is part of a backup plan. We also have, we use the Smart Find substitute management system where staff in schools can put in their absences and it calls out to substitutes. And we already have some jobs in place because, as you mentioned, we do have some teachers that have COVID and they're going to be out for the first 2 weeks of school. And so we will be closely monitoring that, and it will be important for us to monitor for outbreaks, but certainly that is a worry.
Thank you, Dr. Miller.
Commissioner Adams, you good? President White?
A couple quick observations. First thing that comes to mind is, unfortunately, I have the occasion to go through a drive-through every now and then, and I see the advertisements at various restaurants, and the pay usually starts at about $15, and sometimes is in excess of that. And then, being a student of employment industry, I see that sometimes these companies are offering college tuition and other benefits. My point is, I look at the $15 on the serve as a substitute page on your PowerPoint for custodial staff and food service, and even the bus attendants at $16.31. The challenge may be, and I'm curious as to what your observations are, the challenge may be in attracting people to these jobs when in fact they can work elsewhere and make more than $15 an hour. So what do you think about the competing market? I'm observing people offering more than $15 an hour pretty regularly.
Yeah, you know, there obviously is a push for 15 in a lot of different places, but we've certainly seen that take hold. And we certainly pushed with our Bente contract to raise it to 15. And I guess the point or the question you're asking is was that enough? Right. And I don't know that we would have predicted that 5 months ago.
Fair enough. And is there any conversation about adjusting it to what the market is apparently putting out there? I agree with your observation. We got here, and it's a good place to be, but apparently the market has shifted, and people can get higher salaries. And have we contemplated? And I know this all has financial implications, and you wouldn't do anything like this, of course, without going to the board and the independent monitor. But have we contemplated, raising the bar again?
I'd say we haven't yet fully analyzed that, and we haven't yet fully investigated other types of incentives. I think that's something that we need to be looking at and mindful of as we look at these shortages that I presented to you tonight. Not everything is about money. I think what we hear, right, is that COVID has helped each of us in our own ways think about what's important to us in our lives and reevaluate some of those things. So I think it's probably a bit more complex than just money, but it's something we need to think about.
Thank you.
Commissioner LeBron?
Yep. First, I want to just say the math ain't mathin' for me. So what that means is I'm supporting Dr. Jallo's request to have some sort of verification for these numbers. But just a couple of points. The teacher shortage was kind of surprising to hear in this regard, although I do recognize that I have had some of my own schools that I am the board liaison for reach out to say that they have yet to have some teachers assigned to special education classes. But I think I would like actually a separate presentation to have the discussion about what it means when we as a district continue to use the terminology right sizing, and yet we're having a presentation like 2 days before school starts saying that we have a shortage. And so I'm going to request a separate presentation and some verification around these numbers. And it's just one of those moving numbers that I personally feel like we can't get a legit answer on. But if we're asking the board to then make cuts in this area because we need to right size, we just need verification of that. On slide number 16, there is a typo. I believe it's a typo. Unless you're saying that new bus drivers are being paid $20 and then substitute bus drivers make $18.46. Is that what we're saying? They make less?
Yes.
Okay. And then I just want to put it out there that in some school districts across the states, especially in the southern states who are already open and including Georgia, school board members are actually acting as subs in some of the schools. And it makes sense because we do have our background checks with the Office of Children and Family Services. And I would want this board to consider being a sub for some of our schools to help our schools get through this as well. Even though I know we all work full time, myself included, I would be willing to take PTO and go back into the classroom to sub to support our schools, because if it is all hands on deck, then that includes our hands as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Commissioner Clark?
Yes, I did have a couple of questions. I noticed in your presentation, one of the things when we talked about shortages, you indicated that you anticipated some teachers and other professionals moving out because of the weekly COVID testing, and if they have not had the vaccination. But my question is, regardless of where they moved in New York State, wouldn't that still be a requirement? They would have to do this. So basically, given the fact that if they move to another district, that doesn't go away. But my other question is on recruitment. What is the pipeline looking like as far as our recruitment efforts? Are you seeing an uptick in applications for the positions that we currently have available?
I don't think so. I think as a district, we have had limited strategic initiatives to build a pipeline to the district, and through the federal funding, and we have developed multiple proposals to do just that, and we're waiting for approval and access to those funds to get those implemented so that we can partner with higher learning to bring explicitly people to the Rochester City School District.
And I have a question if you're done, Commissioner Clark. Yeah, just in terms, okay. Just in terms of, are we seeing a resignation or decline in staff similar to what we're seeing with the bus drivers, Dr. Miller?
I don't think, I think we see some evidence that our retirements and resignations are up. Anecdotally, we need to analyze further, but anecdotally, seeing some really excellent teachers who left the district this summer to go to suburbs. I don't know that I see this more, to go back to Commissioner Clark's question, with substitutes taking a step back or a pause, and some other positions like bus drivers, certainly.
All right. Mr. Malloy, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Miller, can you provide us any type of update on our RAP contract negotiations, or also our AZAR unit, which is entering its third year without a contract? So if you could, is there any type of update?
I think it would be best in executive session to do that, and we certainly could provide you brief updates on both.
Thank you.
So, Commissioner Malloy, are you requesting that we go into executive session?
End of the meeting?
Well, are there people who like to, do we need a motion to do that? But we'll do that later. We'll ask for that later.
I don't know if there's a motion needed or not for a vote, but I specifically just asked for a current state today, because for me personally right now, I want to focus on the state of where we're at with school openings, although I recognize that it is equally important that both our collective bargaining units, who are still left without contracts and have done an amazing amount of work throughout this pandemic, are reimbursed. I think for me personally, I would focus that conversation for next Tuesday, because we're still dealing with this transportation crisis. And now we know that another additional 117 kids are going to be without transportation. And I know we're using these numbers, but what that means is 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds who are going to be without buses throughout the entire district. So these are not limited to school 10, 17, and 22. We now know as of today that 46 is impacted that school number 9 is being impacted, and now we don't know what other schools are going to be impacted. So for me, I appreciate this presentation because I wanted to get a grasp on the other deficits that exist as we open schools, that we're not fully prepared, that we're not ready, but we're moving forward anyway. And I do believe that there will be consequences for this, but here we are, we're already here. I personally just want to focus on that. And if the conversation, if you all decide to do that, that's your right, respectfully, I will just leave. I just want to focus on what's going to happen with the rest of these kids that don't have buses. That's just where I'm at.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. So we will discuss that once we get to that agenda item, but I'm going to turn the conversation to the president to talk about in-person or virtual meetings for the board. President White?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Commissioner Malloy, were you going to say something?
I just wanted to say that I'm not things aren't mutually exclusive. You know, we can do what you're going to do, Commissioner LeBron. I would like to have.
Actually, you don't need to respond because if you're not worried about these kids and what buses they're going to be on, you don't have kids that don't have a bus and don't have a way to school. That is a privilege that you have. That's a privilege I have. But we are still legally responsible for the rest of our children who don't have a bus right now and the impact of that. And I'm not saying it's not important to have a contract. I'm saying have that conversation next Tuesday. We don't have answers for these kids right now. These families. No, Van, you're not my father. I've told you this multiple times. You don't get to control how I say things and when I say things. She didn't need to respond to me. Well, she needs to respond and be responsible to these hundreds of families without transportation.
Commissioner LeBron, please.
No, President White, you don't get to tell me when to speak and not to speak. She did not have to respond, period. That's it.
Respectfully, in fact.
No, respectfully, she didn't have to respond. That's it.
In fact,
she can respond to the hundreds of families whose kids don't have transportation, including 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds who are going to be walking in the dark and in the cold. Respond to those families. Don't respond to a comment you don't like how I said it.
Commissioner LeBron, respectfully. The chair does have the chair under our bylaws. And if I am now chairing, the gavel has been handed over to me. If you want the opinion of our general counsel, he can provide it. It is not that I deem myself to be your superior or your father or anything like that. I am chairing the meeting, and by our bylaws, you cannot speak unless you're recognized by the chair. Commissioner Malloy was speaking. If you want to speak after she has spoken,
to me. She can speak. She doesn't need to respond to me. She needs to respond to these families who don't have transportation next week.
Commissioner LeBron.
Actually, who don't have transportation this Thursday, all the way into next week until God knows when.
Commissioner LeBron, every member of the Board of Education has the same.
Every member is not feeling the impact of this the same. I promise you that.
Commissioner LeBron, it is important that you recognize we are all in this struggle together. And
the struggle does not look the same for all of us. You will not say that lie. You will not say that lie in these days. The struggle does not look the same for all of us.
To lift everybody up, we have to be respectful and focused. And screaming and yelling and accusing people of not having the same concern about the citizens is not fair and it's not accurate.
I'm going to go live and let this come. They do not have the same concern.
Commissioner Malloy, are you finished with your comments? You're entitled to finish your comments.
Thanks. I really care about our children, and we need to be focused on a lot of different issues right now, certainly transportation. I simply wanted to get an update on the contract negotiations in executive session later, just because I like to be knowledgeable about what is happening so I'm not caught off guard later in our district. I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for a contract negotiation. Azar is entering its 3rd year without a contract, and RAP does not have a contract either. I care about our employees, but I also, first and foremost, care about the children of this district. And they're not mutually exclusive. We can care about all of it. Thank you.
So do you have any objection to getting an update from our general counsel at a subsequent meeting? We don't have to have the executive session tonight is what I'm proposing.
Right. I just would like to get an update as soon as possible on this matter. Thank you.
And Mr. Carling, you are here. You've heard this conversation. You can certainly prepare or speak to the superintendent about preparing a presentation in executive session so that all of us can become informed as to the status of those negotiations.
It would actually be Dr. Miller, but he's also here.
Okay.
He can do this.
Absolutely. All right, thank you very much. All right, the gavel was indeed handed over to me to discuss an issue that actually is COVID-related. The governor recently decided that we could, if we wanted to, meet virtually. We've been doing that for quite some time because the law allowed it under Governor Cuomo. Governor Hochul decided that after telling the community, after Governor Cuomo told the community that we should return to the open sessions, Governor Hochul determined that meeting virtually is once again an option for this community and every public entity. So what we're here to discuss, and thank you, Vice President Elliott, for turning the gavel over to me for this purpose. What we're here to discuss is whether we want to continue to meet in this setting that is live and in person, or do we want to go back to what we were doing for about a year, which is meeting virtually. Anybody want to begin the discussion?
I'll begin it.
Okay,
Yes,
go ahead,
thank you.
Commissioner
I
Clark.
think we should continue to meet live and in person, because if we're asking our students and our teachers to return to classroom, then we need to have a public face to that also, and we need to meet the public face to face.
Very good. I'll just continue to move to my left. Commissioner LeBron?
I would be open to either, but I would, if we were going to do virtually, I would actually only say that we limit it to 1 or 2 committee meetings. Absolutely have the board business meeting in person and alternate, but I do want to uplift that if we're asking all of our staff to be back in schools and our families and not giving them the option, then we should also have the same practice of being in person.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Vice President Elliott?
You know, I think that the offer for virtual should be offered in case, you know, there's some health issues. So that if people can't make it because of health issues, that they have that option. I'm certainly in support of us doing the business meeting in person, but we may find that some of the committee meetings we want to do via Zooms. Thank you.
And in fact, Vice President Elliott, we did that just the other day. We did meet virtually because of the last minute nature of the need for the meeting, and I just think it was more convenient to get to the issues right away. So
sure. That
does, Governor Hochul's decision does always give us that option. Commissioner Adams?
If we never have another Zoom meeting again, I would not be upset. I'm telling you.
All right. How about you, Commissioner Malloy?
I'm open to either, but being in person is certainly affords opportunity for people to come here to speak in person, but I'm open to either.
And you, Commissioner Powell?
I have no objection to meeting in person, but I will make the observation that over time, our Zoom meetings tended to flow better with fewer occasions where people talked over each other or otherwise disrespected our protocols. So there's a trade-off there, but if it is the will of the body, I am amenable to meeting in person for sure.
Mr. President?
Yes, ma'am.
What does it mean for people to speak in person? Speakers?
This shift.
Was there any change to that?
No, there's no change to that, and I can.
So it's still 20 people maximum who can come in
right.
person?
The board's bylaws still stay in effect, and actually you've seen we've modified to allow persons to not only come in person but also address the board virtually. That will remain the same if we were to do the virtual or in person.
Thank you.
Particularly with Commissioner Clark's observations, and others have shared that view as well. If we are asking our citizens and our students, many of who are not even vaccinated and can't be vaccinated, we're asking them to return to the classroom, and our staff, I think it is only responsible on our part to do the same. So I too support continuing in this in-person environment, but having the flexibility which the governor's order allows us to do to, when necessary, to be virtual. I think we will find that other organizations are doing that. I'm hearing City Hall has had some meetings virtually already. So we wouldn't be the only ones if we did it occasionally to do that. So it seems that I don't need to take a vote. it seems that it's the will of this body to continue on in this in-person setting, and that's what we will continue to do. I will, because this is a HR committee, I'll turn the gavel back over to you, Vice President Elliott.
Thank you. So any
I need to make one comment. I had left and went out and spoke to Nurse Bullock out there in the hall, but I need to publicly take my hat off to her because she is a staple in this community, and I just want there to be no doubt about my support for her and what she's always done in this community. And so I couldn't let this go, this opportunity to get by without saying.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams.
And I even took off my shades and let see my surgical eye. Okay.
Thank you so very much. I'm sure she appreciates that. Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah, I just would like an update, if we're going to be meeting tomorrow, to get an update on the impact of these additional seats lost and where families can expect information. As I mentioned, the families from 46 are families who do not speak English and don't understand what's happening. And so when will we as a board and as a community get an update on the impact of what happened today with the additional seats lost?
President White?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I would have said at the end of my brief chair of this meeting, I would have said, let's discuss when we'll have that next meeting. But I don't want to do that because, normally we would take advantage of everybody being here and saying what time you're available, but we quite frankly don't know what the administration is going to be able to do. So the clerk will be in touch with folks about that follow-up meeting. The other observation that I would make is that these information sessions, these are basically information sessions, because by and large, when we voted that school would start on September the 9th, the administration, which is charged with the operational aspects of this district, has to make that happen. Also, I would note, I was informed by council that that when the superintendent indicated in her PowerPoint that the good news was that RGRTA had, its Board of Trustees had approved the contract, unless the contract and cost goes above what we allocated in our 2021 budget, no board approval or resolution is required. I'm only mentioning this because these meetings are helpful, I'm sure, to the public. They provide for transparency. But the reality is, there's no, that I can tell at this particular time, there's no particular action that is going to be required, particularly in the RGRTA contract. And also, the board determined yesterday that school would start on September the 9th. Now, again, I'm not saying we shouldn't have meetings, but people should understand these are just informational meetings, and to some extent, they can be very frustrating for people because the information, no fault of the superintendent, is always changing. So at some point, we have to say to the administration, it may not be before tomorrow, let the community know when it is written in stone. Because to some extent, I believe, I'm speaking very transparently, this is becoming frustrating for people. Not only our colleagues, but I could imagine parents who are waiting for that definitive answer that yes, and again, let me emphasize, we saw today that the superintendent, in many respects, doesn't control this. 9 additional individuals said they cannot drive, they cannot or will not drive. So she is now trying to figure out how to do that. So my only point to my colleagues is we can meet tomorrow. I can't tell you when. We should consult with the superintendent. But I want my colleagues in the community to know that these, in essence, have become informational sessions. Perhaps helpful, but I also want you to know it's a double-edged sword. Some people might become very frustrated by every meeting, hearing the same indecision, the same uncertain future. And so we ought to contemplate that when we think about when our next meeting is. I can start down here and work my way here.
That's okay. Go ahead.
You're good, Commissioner Clark? Did you want to say anything in response to that? Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah, a couple of things actually. So I don't care that board members or staff are feeling anxious. Our families are feeling extremely anxious, and our families have no answers. And the only way that they feel that they can get an answer is through these types of meetings. I have families on the phone for hours today trying to get answers with transportation and not being able to get through. We had community members, both myself and Vice President Elliott, community members who reached out to both of us saying, I have been on the phone for hours calling different numbers in the district and I can't get through. Advocating as community-based organizations, we can't operate in that way. So there is no more time. This is it. School opens on the 9th and then on the 13th. We know that those 5 schools are supposed to be taken care of on the 13th. Now we have hundreds of kids without transportation and school is starting on the 9th. We don't know who else's children are going to be impacted yet. That's where I stand on this. I don't care if we have 10 more meetings before the 9th to inform families, but they are entitled to understand what's happening and what the impact is going to be in their household and what they're going to do. The other thing I want to add with the RTS contract, I did find the original resolution. We voted on it on May 23rd, 2019. If anybody's interested in seeing it, that was the board business meeting where we did a contract for 5 years and each amount it grew. However, there is a clause that RTS is asking us in that contract, and we should be clear on exactly dollar for dollar what we're paying for. We cannot honestly say that that contract is 100% paying for actual current transportation. And so I won't get into the details of that. We can have a sidebar conversation, but we had some of these conversations last night in executive. So I want the public and the future, whoever's on this board, to understand exactly what we paid for in this time, in this crisis. We cannot just scoop it and say that we had a contract in 2019 that covered 12.3 million and we haven't hit that number yet. No, we're paying some other stuff in this contract that we need to be clear to the public about public dollars and how they're being used. So I believe that we do need to meet and have an amendment on that resolution and spell out exactly what we're paying out to RTS. What's for transportation and what's for other. And with that, I'm done.
Vice President Elliott?
No comment, thank you.
I just want to note for all that, the information that I shared regarding the RGRTA contract was given to me by General Counsel. But we can, and again, Commissioner Brown, let me say, I don't disagree with 95% of what you said. I think meeting is important. I was just trying to identify that at a certain point, as you said, people want answers. They don't want to hear what the challenges are, because they clearly know by now. And I'm quoting you, Commissioner LeBron, they want answers, and I agree with that. So our future meetings, should we have them, should focus on answers. Commissioner Adams? Okay. Commissioner Malloy?
I don't have anything.
And Commissioner Powell?
Thank you. First, I want to thank you for bringing clarity to that on the RTA contract, because that was kind of dangling out there. I wasn't certain whether we still had unfinished business, as it were, around opening schools. Secondly, out of 3 points, is I have a procedural question. The agenda has us resolution to consider virtual versus in person. I got a sense that we'd reached a consensus, but we didn't.
I can address that if you don't mind. In planning for the meeting, and you'll notice that's a locked item. There's a little lock box on it because it's not public. Just in case there was the need to do a vote regarding that. That is, but it's not technically on the agenda.
Okay, so my question remains: are we going to vote on it? I did hear consensus, but that's not the same as putting a vote on the record about whether we're going to return to in-person.
Oh, do we need a vote for that?
No. I was told that we don't. It just needs to be a virtual.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Commissioner Powell. I had indicated that I did not believe there was a need for a vote on that. And I saw General Counsel just indicate that that is accurate. We don't need to vote on whether we're going to return to...
Okay, so just to make sure I understand where we're at, there is consensus that we return to in-person, and that's what we're going to do.
That's what I heard,
okay.
And that's what I confirmed by my comments. And,
okay.
And no one objected.
But there may be some time when we want to do virtual for health reasons, for example, or committee meetings or something to that effect. Yeah.
Okay. Now, my last point is, on the topic of meetings that are informational versus decision-making meetings. You know, one of the dilemmas, to your point, President White, about being a double-edged sword is when we, as leaders in the district, reflect back to the community a sense of panic, it only makes it more difficult, not only for the community to have trust and confidence in our leadership, but it also spreads a sense of panic through the institution. You know, one of the things I think I commented to someone not too long ago, having been a drill sergeant for a number of years, is that I learned that recruits cannot learn when they're in a constant state of fear. And especially of late, our employees from top to bottom, left to right, have been in a constant state of fear. And I think it's interfering with executive function. It's interfering with people who are in a position where they're supposed to be making important decisions. It's making it more difficult for them to get to that business of making decisions. Furthermore, there are people who aren't directly responsible for making decisions, but who are looking around and seeing this dysfunction, and they stop all work, waiting for decisions that may or may not affect them. So my plea to our employees is keep your head down and do your work, and try not to let the chaos around you keep you from developing your plans, planning the future for our children in their classrooms and otherwise. Do what you can to move us forward, and please don't get caught up in the fear and the panic that you may be seeing and feeling around you. That's all that I can offer from my years of experience, and I hope that not only that the employees of this district will heed that advice, but understand that I care deeply about your well-being, mental and physical and emotional well-being, and I don't choose to add to your burden. If I could carry your load for you, I would do that. And sadly, all I can do is try not to contribute to that that sense of panic and fear. And I urge my colleagues to do likewise. Thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Jallo, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in about the contract for RTS.
Sure.
I think, you know, I'm very happy that we were able to come to some agreement around helping the district in their time of need. But I think as a board, it's important for you to understand that contract, because it has about 6 or 7 areas that you should be somewhat familiar with from a financial standpoint, particularly depending on which funding sources you decide to use to pay. And it may have a future impact on the financial status of the district. So you may have granted some kind of approval back in 2019, but as we go to 2022, I think it's important for you to really understand the financial obligation and other obligations that this contract will hold this organization under for years to come.
Let me just ask a question around that, and maybe Carlene could respond to this. Here we are in a crisis, right? Do we have to align ourselves with what we've already put in place, given that we have a crisis? So I don't know what the allocation is for RTS, but that was under different circumstances. Now here we are in a crisis. How do we, that sounds well, Dr. Jallo, but how do we provide the latitude in this kind of a situation where we've lost bus drivers, we need RTS, you know, where is the latitude in that? And I certainly understand that, you know, we have a fiduciary responsibility, but here's the crisis. And so how do you balance, the fiduciary responsibility with the crisis that we're undergoing right now. And Carlene, if you don't mind coming up and helping with, to weigh in on this conversation.
While she's walking, can I say something?
Sure, absolutely.
I think that one of the ways you strike that balance or understand that is to understand, clearly what you're obligating to. It's an opportunity. RTS is partnering with RCSD. We're thankful for their help and their support and their quick response to this situation that we have with transportation. But I just, like any other contract, want you to understand the legal and financial ramifications or implications of this agreement. As happy as we are to have the opportunity to work closely with RTS.
Thank you, Dr. Jallo. Carlene, Ms. Pierce?
Commissioner Elliott and all other commissioners, what I can say this evening is that you might recall that when we actually went out to bid with Ontario Busing, that contract actually came in less than the RTS contract. And so a number of our buses had shifted over to Ontario, as well as using First Student and Monroe. So the contract that is, the resolution that's currently in place is actually, as stated earlier, is much higher than what the actual obligation is. Actual obligation, again, off the top of my head, as I recall, is $5.4 million. So what we're going to actually have to do is bring to you a budget transfer in order to make this accommodation work for the additional money. I don't have numbers for you this evening. We're still working through that, as been stated. But what we will need to do is figure out how we're going to shift money within the general fund over to transportation because it's aidable. And so we want to maximize the aid of this contract, of this unplanned expenditure, right? So we need to shift money from, and it's going to get a little bit complicated, but we are of good fortune that we do have SRSA money that we can take and place current operating expenditures into SRSA, which will then free up the money that we need to accommodate this new request. So you're going to see budget transfers going through or coming through under resolution to move money around so we can accommodate the request. So I think I've answered your question. If it were different times, we absolutely would be once again looking for budget cuts. We would have to say, let's go back to the drawing board, scrub through all our expenditures one more time, and come up with this difference now that we need to accommodate this need.
Yeah, I just wanted to put it on the table that this is a different kind of a time that we're in. It is a crisis time. We would not normally, if we have a budget for a certain amount, if the board has approved a certain amount in a typical year, fine, but this is an atypical year, and it's going to cost more. And I just want us, while we certainly have to be a good fiduciary stewards, there also has to be this allowance for times that we're in right now. So
absolutely.
I just wanted to also share that with Dr. Jallo.
And please know too that Commissioner Rosa has basically given her team to us to say we will help you through this. I've been in touch with SED, with the folks there. We are walking this walk together. It's very important that we understand what is aidable under transportation aid, what's not. And as Dr. Jallo has stated, it's important for us to understand that contract because some of the expenditures coming in are not aidable. So we have to work that all out and make sure we've got it in the correct bucket, so to speak.
Thank you. Any other? President White?
Yeah. Can I jump
in?
I'm
sorry, Commissioner Rosa?
Sure. I think it's just to clarify and add to what Colleen actually said. I think it's important. The reason I have been not only actively listening, even though I've, switching from one computer to the other hasn't been easy, is to really assure you that while I think most of us know we are stewards of the public funding, both federal and state. And I think we all understand the issue of the crisis and how to support our communities and our students, just like the staff worked this weekend to try to get the $45 million out the door in terms of staffing and everything else. And this was on a Labor Day weekend. I asked my entire staff, to be on call and to be available. But at the same time, there are things that we want to be mindful, and we still have to proceed in a judicious way to ensure that at the end of the day that we do what we are responsible for, and that in no way that we do anything that's going to create more problems for the district and for the community. And so what we like to say at the department with our experts is that we will guide, we will help the district make the kinds of decisions within the law and be responsible, but at the same time, with our children in mind, really looking for solutions. So it's really thinking together in ways that we can solve issues, but not just short term. One of the things that I shared with Dr. Jallo and the superintendent and others is that you have to look at this from not only currently the issue before us, but you also have to look for long-term solutions. And long-term solutions mean that you really have to always look for what if, and you have to have the kind of plan that is financially, the kind of plan that financially keeps the board on task and keeps the board responsible to the public in terms of the finances. So I am, like I said yesterday, I am with you. I am looking to look at every aspect, every way that we can support the district during this crisis. But at the same time, we still have to look at ways that we can solve the solution long-term, not just short-term.
Bring your support and your wisdom. I would just add, in terms of the RGRTA contract, the update I received at the beginning of the meeting from the superintendent and our general counsel was that the negotiations have not been finalized. That's why Carlene cannot, or Steve, or anybody, cannot give us a price for those services. Whether they will come within an existing contract or not, we don't know. And I was assured that as soon as we find out what that number is, that I would be contacted, and of course, immediately I would contact you all, and then we will have a decision about meeting and approving or not approving that contract. But we don't know what it is, as Carlene says, at this particular time, so we'll wait to get that information.
Well, let me just, do you have any questions for for Carlene?
Okay. On record is that we would still either have to have some sort of resolution, whether it's an amendment or a new resolution coming forth with budget transfers. Just for the record, there's going to be some resolution that the board will need to vote on.
There will, yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
I wasn't quite finished.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's no worries, no worries. And the other thing I wanted to emphasize is that, and I said this last night, the solution has to be long-term. All we're doing right now is just putting our finger in the dam and trying to prevent the citizens of this community from being overloaded and flooded with crises. But as you all know, a number of committed community leaders from all aspects of this community had agreed to meet at First Genesis Baptist Church tomorrow night, that's September the 8th at 6:30. It's a wonderful group of folks that are going to help people understand what the district is doing in terms of transportation, operationally, what people need to do if they want to become drivers, what they need to do if they want to offer up some kind of carpooling service on their own, independent of the district. It was intended to be a wonderful turnout. Now, I'm concerned about, as I said to Vice President Elliott, whether we'll be able to have that meeting or not, but I just wanted to say to the community, we are committed to conducting, the community that is, and I'm just a part of that community, committed to having dialogue with folks who, beyond this building, who we will need to come up with that long-term solution. So, to those folks who are prepared to come to that meeting tomorrow, it may or may not happen. Stay tuned, because it will eventually happen, because we cannot solve this challenge without the entire community being engaged and involved. So stay tuned. That's it for me, Vice President.
Any other questions? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
And we do have a board survey that we have to complete, right?
Yes, 1 second. Let me just open the vote for the adjournment.
What'd you say?
I would also, while we're doing this, I wanted to ask if the administration wants to reconvene a meeting, is a virtual option on the table for tomorrow, or is it just in person for tomorrow? I just wanted to clarify that.
Madam Vice President, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
What I was suggesting is that we wait to hear from the superintendent in terms of how she, if in fact the meeting tomorrow would be productive, and if so, at that time, we can poll the board with respect to they want to meet virtually or in person.
Yes, they asked.
They did ask.
They asked if tomorrow, if they do need to have a meeting, if a virtual option was available.
I thought you were asking.
Yeah,
okay.
no.
All right, so they do need to meet tomorrow?
If they do, they are asking if it has to be in person or if it will be virtual.
Well, maybe we're speaking over each other. I think the onus is on them to let us know whether they need to provide, and again, I'm thinking we want answers. We want answers. And so, yes, I think everybody would like to have a meeting if they have answers. Tell her, and I can, as soon as I step off this dais, I can tell her, we want to meet, but it's contingent upon whether you're prepared to meet.
I just want to say, though, for myself, because we're not having the discussion, President White can't speak for the full board if we haven't had this discussion. For myself, I'm willing to come in person or virtually, but I would anticipate that tomorrow there is a resolution for the RTA contract, because we have to start Monday with the RTS amendment for these schools to have transportation for these students.
Again, if the administration says they have a resolution prepared, no matter what it is, or business that they want to meet with us, absolutely, there's not a single member up here who wouldn't want to meet. But they have to tell us what, and again, the emphasis, I'm stealing Commissioner LeBron's words, they have to have answers. And one of the answers may be, we need a resolution to do X, Y, and Z. If they need that, we will have a meeting. So let us know, is what I'm saying.
President White, can I just clear up procedurally? You don't need to have a special vote or anything. Is however you notice the meeting, and you, as the president, do get to initialize that and set the agenda. However you notice the meeting is how the meeting will be. If the board at some point wants to make a definitive ruling that you'll not have any virtual meetings, or that particular ones will or not be, that's fine. But it just like for tomorrow, if the administration asks for a meeting, you could notice it as virtual. And unless your colleagues then choose when you get on to vote to change that, then it could convene differently. But that is sufficient under the bylaws and the law to establish how the meeting will be established.
So what you're advising us is that I should seek consensus on how we will meet if we meet tomorrow. Is that right, Steve?
I'm saying that you can set it however you like. You can take direction from your colleagues should you so choose, but if it's a quick decision that needs to be made, you actually, as the president, do set the agenda, including noticing the format, and that would be the initial way we would proceed. You don't need to get 4 votes one way. There's no default, because our bylaws simply say we follow the public officers law. Public officers law has been amended under the new statute to provide for virtual meetings as an option. So it's just whichever you choose at this point.
All right, so unless I hear otherwise, I prefer to remain flexible tomorrow. That will allow us to be agile, so quote, it wouldn't be at the last minute. So I prefer that we meet tomorrow, just for this limited purpose, virtually, just so that we can remain flexible to the various needs of the superintendent. So I've only seen one member of the, or 3 members of the senior team, and I see one member sort of shaking her head that seems to make some sense. And so long as my colleagues, I realize this is my call, but I don't like to do things that would affect my colleagues negatively. And I don't see anybody saying, no, don't meet virtually. So that's what we'll do if there's a meeting tomorrow, we will meet virtually. And we will stay in touch with the superintendent to figure out if there's a need tomorrow.
Sounds good.
All right, did you make the motion?
The poll is in the board docs for
Oh,
those
okay.
who would like to take it.
Did we vote to adjourn, everybody?
Yes,
Okay.
and that passed 17.
And I already did my,
Yes.
All right, good night, everybody. Be safe.